At the outset, I'd like to introduce to you some of the salient points that Mr. Edano, Chief Cabinet Secretary, mentioned at his press conference this afternoon. Regarding evacuation policy surrounding Fukushima Daiichi, he mentioned that he intends to strengthen support for those who have evacuated and those who stay at home in the radius of 20 to 30 kilometers. Also, various radiation data in the air and soil surrounding Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant has been accumulated. Based on its comprehensive analysis results, the government is preparing for setting more precise criteria for evacuation and indoor evacuation zones. And in response to a question, Mr. Edano mentioned that at the present time, there is no pre-assumption on whether evacuation and indoor evacuation zones should be expanded or narrowed. It depends on the analysis results from radiation monitoring. And there was another issue regarding the testing of the thyroid gland exposure dose, which could have more severe impact on children. And we have conducted medical checkup on 900 children aged from 0 to 15 years old who live in Kawamata town and Iidate village of Fukushima prefecture, which are located beyond the 30-kilometer radius from the Daiichi power plant. As a result of this testing, we have found no one has been exposed to radiation levels exceeding the standard values of radiation dose, just as we had in the two previous medical tests. And also, there was reference to the issue of distribution of donations received. Normally, a disaster-stricken prefectural government establishes a third-party organization to set criteria for the allocation of donations that were collected through the Red Cross and other humanitarian organizations. However, since the quake and tsunami hit multiple prefectures this time, we think that the central government will play a central role in creating criteria for the allocation of donations to the disaster victims on behalf of these prefectures. And lastly, being asked the question of information disclosure, Mr. Edano mentioned ever since the quake happened, he has been repeatedly requesting to METI or TEPCO and other institutions that even if they are bad news, they should be disclosed. There should never be a case that the government hide bad news. And he was making the point that this information disclosure is being promoted, and it has been the case so far. Now I would like to move on to the briefings from other officials. First, I'd like to ask Mr. Hidehiko Nishiyama of NISA.
Thank you, Mr. Shikata. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As usual, I'd like to update the recent status of Fukushima Daiichi plants. Regarding Unit 1, with respect to reactor, even after we reduced the amount of water introduced to the reactor, the temperature of the pressured vessel is declining. The pressure is slightly rising, but the trend is normal. But we will closely watch the data. We changed the power source of water introduction from a tentative diesel generator to the electricity from the outside grid. This is the case in Unit 2 and 3 also. Regarding a spent fuel pool of Unit 1, we confirmed the point where water throwing will be done by a concrete pumping machine. We'll throw water to the spent fuel pool of the Unit 1 either tomorrow or after. Regarding stagnant water in the turbine building of Unit 1, we began to move the water from the hot well to the condensate storage tank. This is the preparation for pumping up the stagnant water to the hot well. Next, regarding Unit 2, although the temperature of the pressured vessel shows upward trend, the parameters of the reactor are basically stable. Regarding the stagnant water in the turbine building, we began to move the water in the hot well to the condensate storage tank. This is a preparation for us to move the stagnant water to the hot well. We placed cameras to watch the level of water surface in the trench. Unit 3. The parameters of the reactor are relatively stable. And as I said earlier, with Unit 1, we changed the power source of water introduction from tentative diesel generator to the electricity from the outside grid. Regarding the spent fuel pool, we threw 75 tons of pure water to the spent fuel pool of the Unit 3. Regarding stagnant water, we are moving the water in the hot well to the condensate storage tank. This is a preparation for us to move stagnant water to the hot well. And in this Unit 3, we also placed cameras to watch the level of water surface in the trench. Regarding Unit 4, we are throwing 180 tons of pure water by a concrete pumping machine to the spent fuel pool of the Unit 4. In each unit, we are checking supplemental equipment's integrity. We are also doing tentative power line work in each unit. In addition to those, we are checking the integrity of lighting related circuits. Regarding the spilling water from the crack of the pit to the sea, we are trying to stop the flow, but so far it is not successful. We will continue our effort to stop the flow from the crack to the sea. We are also investigating how the radiated water came into the pit, whether the water in the pit is actually spilling into the sea. We are not quite sure the route in which this water is coming. And lastly, we will check how much radiation the water has. So we'd like to find out how the radiated materials in the we grasped in the seawater came from. That's all for my report today. Thank you very much.
Next, Mr. Watanabe next.
それでは NEXT の渡辺さん。
Next, continue to monitoring activities and papers we provided shows the updated data. And I would like to point it out 2 points. One is the new data of sea monitoring. The sample at the 1st of April is written in 9 pages. And one more thing, the fallout data written in 39 page. This is the 9 a.m. of 1st of April to 9 a.m. April 2nd, 24 hours fallout radioactive materials. The Tokyo data, the cesium is still exists, but the iodine is declined to not detectable level. Thank you.
Mr. Shinano, please.
Thank you. The Nuclear Safety Commission continues to conduct the evaluation of environment radiation monitoring result. And I would like to share with you the most recent report. This is the evaluation results based on the information published between 10 on April 1st to 1300 hours on April 2. Overall, there has not been any problematic reading. Let me go one by one. First, the spatial radiation dose rate. The findings has been the same as before. There have been some locations where relatively higher dose were identified, but we have concluded that those levels do not affect the human health. The second is the radioactivity in the air. The dust samplings collected in March 31, additional information was published to the measuring results. We, however, found no need to change the opinion that we have delivered earlier. The evaluation remains the same. The third is the aerial application monitoring. We have obtained a number of readings, but the data are not sufficient enough to make any viable evaluation. So we have not conducted any evaluation based on the obtained measurings. Fourth, the environmental sample. For the seawater, there is no new information obtained. That's for the seawater. And the MEX gave a report yesterday. For the area 20 to 30 kilometers from the plant, they have conducted the sampling or testing of plutonium and uranium. Plutonium 238, plutonium 239, 240 were not detected or were not below the detectable level. And also uranium of 235, 238 ratio indicated the national abundance ratio. The fifth is the environmental radioactivity level surveyed by prefecture. For the spatial radiation dose rate, we have concluded as a result of evaluation that they do not affect people's health. Drinking water, tap water, the iodine 131 and cesium have been detected in some points, but they were all below the previous day's level. Therefore, they are below the regulated level. Therefore, we have evaluated that they do not affect the human health. Thank you.
Now, I'd like to ask Mr. Yokota of MHLW to speak.
私の方からは4月1日
This is for the April 1st and 2nd, the results of the testing of the food samples. For the April 1st, if you refer to the April 1st chart or table, 9 prefectures produce were reported. There were altogether 33 samples, and none were above the provisional standard level.
番号
Among them, 13 and 14 from Fukushima, that is beef, in the briefing of the 31st of March, the measurement on the 31st of March exceeded the provisional limit, but after retesting, no radioactive material had been detected. Now turning to the report of the 1st of April from 5 prefectures, samples totaling 64 have been tested. And the result is that they are all below the provisional limit. And then there is another piece of paper that summarizes the result after the 19th of March. 875 samples had been tested in total, and those that existed the provisional limit totaled 136. That is all from me. Thank you.
Foreign Ministry, please.
Thank you, Mr. Shikata. Good evening. Yesterday, Foreign Minister Matsumoto heartily welcomed Dr. Westerwelle of Germany, having visited Japan with the intention to express his sincere sympathy to the damage incurred by Japan, as well as to extend cooperation and to express solidarity. Dr. Westerwelle expressed his respect for the people of Japan, who are facing the calamity with the spirit of mutual aid and ordered behavior. In that respect, Foreign Minister Matsumoto was grateful for Dr. Westerwelle's words of encouragement towards the Japanese people. Dr. Westerwelle wished to reconfirm that at this difficult time, Germany stands by Japan. In the foreign ministers' meeting, there was reference to German-made pumping vehicles. German-made pumping vehicles. The concrete pumping vehicles are made by Putzmeister, a German company. Among the members of the team responding to the nuclear power plant accident, the vehicle is called a giraffe due to its long arm, or in this case, neck, with the length of 58 meters. Dr. Westerwelle explained at yesterday's joint press conference after the foreign ministers' meeting that the vehicle has the capacity of throwing water from 70 meters height. Already, one Putzmeister's pumping vehicle, owned by a Japanese company, has been in operation on the nuclear power plant site. It was referred in the foreign ministers' meeting that besides this one vehicle, additional one Putzmeister concrete pumping vehicle was arriving yesterday, and 3 more would be arriving in due course. These 4 additional vehicles are procured by TEPCO. Foreign Minister Matsumoto appreciated the fact that the operation of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant was being supported by the Germany's high level of technology. Once the immediate crisis is overcome, Dr. Westerwelle stated, Germany wished to cooperate for the economic reconstruction of Japan, a Germany's partner which share democratic values. In the foreign ministers' meeting, Foreign Minister Matsumoto and Dr. Westerwelle discussed Japan-EU Economic Partnership Agreement too. Foreign Minister Matsumoto pointed out that developments towards the Japan-EU Economic Partnership Agreement negotiations would help Japan's economic recovery. In that regard, Dr. Westerwelle concurred in principle with Mr. Matsumoto's view. In the press conference after the meeting, Dr. Westerwelle stated that after the earthquake, the issue of Japan-EU EPA has become the increasingly pressing matter. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
I'd like to open the floor for questions. When you ask a question, please identify yourself with your name and affiliation. Go, Peter.
Thank you. Peter Kuya, German Radio ARD. If I may ask Nishiyama about the leakage again, who came up with the idea to put polymer inside? Is there already some foreign expertise coming to you regarding this problem? And what are other possibilities to solve the problem with the leakage? And if you could be so nice to say again, what are the measurements for the seawater actually at this time? Thank you.
ドイツラジオ ARD ですけれども、西山審議会にもう一度その漏れについて伺いたいんですけれども、ポリマーを入れるという発想は誰の発想だったんでしょうか。そしてすでに外国の専門知識なども入って考慮に入れられているんでしょうか。それとこの漏れを解決するためのその他の可能性というのはどういった対応策の可能性があるのでしょうか。あともう一つ繰り返しになるかもしれませんが伺いたいのは、今現在の実際の海中海の中の測定とおっしゃってるんですけど、濃度のことでもね、はどういうレベルなんでしょうか。
まず今ご質問の件は福島第一原子力発電所の2号機の近くにあるピットの穴の横のコンクリートが少し亀裂があって、そこから水が海に流れているという話です。
The question that you have just asked, I believe you are talking about the crack on the side of the pit that is close to unit number 2 at Fukushima number 1 nuclear power station, and some of the contaminated water flowing into the sea from that crack.
それでその水の流れを止めるために、これがある細い管の中を通ってきている可能性が高いというふうに判断されたので、そこに水を吸うと膨張するポリマーを入れて止めようとしているんですけれども、これは日本の東京電力やその関係の専門家が議論して見出した方法です。
And what we are now trying is to stop the flow of water from this crack. And since it has been confirmed that it is highly likely that the water is coming through a very small diameter pipe, we are trying to stop the flow of water by putting in polymer that has the characteristic of expanding when it absorbs water. And this idea has been arrived at through discussions between TEPCO, Tokyo Electric Power Company, and other experts.
それで今は外国の方もこの原子力発電所のことについていろいろアドバイスしてくれてますので、そういう方々に状況は報告していると思いますけれども、そういう方のアドバイスによってできたものではできた手法ではないと思っております。
Regarding the nuclear power station, we are receiving a variety of different advice from foreign experts, and I would assume that this methodology that has been decided to be taken has also been reported and made known to the foreign experts. But I do not believe the idea itself came as a result of any advice from a foreign expert.
それで なかなかこの水の流れがはっきりしないので、今日取った方法によっては、水の流れが止まってないこともあるので、明日、その流れを特定するための行動を取りながら、それに応じたその水の流れに応じた対応をですね、していきたいと思っていますが、それは水の流れが新しく発見されてからのことになると思います。
And since the flow of water is not clearly identified, it may be possible that the measure that we took would not totally stop the flow of water. So tomorrow, we would like to take some measures and some action that would be able to identify the flow of the water, and we intend to take measures in accordance with the actual flow of water that we will find tomorrow through taking such measures. And we intend to do that after we are able to identify the flow of water.
それから海のその今亀裂からの水が流れ込んでいる海の線量あるいは各種については現在分析中で非常に近いうちに結果が発表されると思いますが、ある程度その放射性物質が含まれているものになるというふうに予想されます。
And regarding the dose rate as well as the nuclides in the seawater into which the water from that crack is flowing into, we are now in the process of analyzing the dose rate and the nuclides. And the results will be made public soon. And we would assume that there will be a certain amount of radioactive material found from the analysis.
文部科学省からも一言、先ほども申し上げましたが、文部科学省が行っている海洋の調査は、プラントから30キロ沖合と、それから南の方の沿岸に向けてのものでございまして、皆様の資料の10ページに、そのポイント地点が書いてございます。
From the Ministry of Education, Culture and Science, MEXT. As I explained to you earlier, we are undertaking monitoring from the sea, 1 point, 30 kilometers offshore the nuclear power plant, and also another point on the southern coast. And the points, the monitoring points from which we are taking the measurements are indicated on page 10 of the document that MEXT has distributed to you today.
それで各種の分析の結果は9ページに載ってございます。
And the results of the nuclide analysis is shown on page 9.
Next question. David.
Hi, I'm Dave Nakamura with the Washington Post. Just a question for anybody. It seems like each day we get some sort of news that seems to suggest that things are not going well at the plant. Things are getting worse. I mean, you have a leak now of this irradiated water. Today they found 2 bodies, and I just wanted maybe Mr. Nishiyama could. I mean, to an outsider, it seems like things continue to get worse there. I don't know how you would respond to that kind of suggestion, but I would like to get your kind of input on that.
ワシントン・ポストの中村と申しますけれども、どなたでも構わないんですが、と言いつつ西山さんに伺いますとおっしゃってますけれども、毎日のように原発のにおける事態はあまりうまくいってない、どんどん悪化しているように外部から見ると思えるんです。例えば放射性を帯びた水が漏れ出していることが発見されたり、また本日は遺体が2名発見されたと いうことなども伺っておりますので、外部の人間から見ると、どんどん悪い方向に悪化しているように思うんですけれども、西山さんとしては、このような見方に関してどのようなご意見でしょうか。
我々は今一番力を注いでいる分野はまず水を入れて燃料についてこれ以上の損傷を避けるということ、これが一番重要で、その次には電気系統を回復させて持続可能な冷却機能を作っていくということです。でそれらについてはこのどうしても不可避的なその水の副作用というものがありますけれども、今申し上げた点についてはある程度の進捗を見ていると思います。
Currently, we are attaching the greatest importance on injecting water so that we can prevent any further damage to the fuel. And the next priority would be to restore the electricity system and create a sustainable cooling system. There are some unavoidable side effects to injecting water, it is true. But I believe we are seeing a certain degree of progress.
それで今その副作用の部分を取り除くために水を処理していい作業環境を取り戻したいと思っております。そういう過程で今回の水の海への漏れが分かってしまったわけで、そういうところはなるべく早く直しながら本来の持続的な冷却システムを作っていくことを進めたいと思っています。
And in order to remove these side effects of injecting the water, we intend to dispose of the water so that we will be able to restore a good working environment. And in that process, we have found some of that water flowing into the sea, and we are working to remedy that situation as soon as possible so that we can go back to our essential work of creating a sustainable cooling system.
Mr. Watanabe also has a comment.
MEXT から環境放射能についてもう一言コメントいたします。皆様お手元の資料にもございますが、環境の放射線のレベル、それから水道水ですね、水道水のレベル、それからフォールアウトのレベルは全国ベース、関東地方も含めて、減少傾向にございます。
Mr. Watanabe from MEXT has some additional comments regarding environmental radioactivity, as is also shown in the document that MEXT has distributed for this press briefing. For all of the readings, including environmental radioactivity levels, level of radioactivity in drinking water, as well as a level of fallout, the trend is towards a declining trend throughout the country, including the Kanto region.
それから福島県についても皆様の資料の6ページ、MEXT の6ページに時系列グラフがございますが、比較的高いレベルの発電所から 20km の地点での放射線のグラフが書いてございますが、これも徐々に減っていることが分かっていただけると思います。
And also, On page 6 of the documents distributed from MEXT, we show a graph by time regarding the levels in Fukushima Prefecture. And we show a graph of radioactivity in a area that is 20 kilometers from the nuclear power station, which is an area with a relatively high level of radioactivity. But even in this area, you can see that there is a gradual decline in the level of radioactivity.
Okay, next question. Michael.
Yeah, mine is somewhat related, so it'd probably be good for me to go now.
Could you identify yourself?
Yes, I am Michael Penn of the Shingetsu News Agency and Press TV. Yeah, in regards to the news that he referred to today about the 2 bodies being found, it's been reported, I assume accurately, that they were probably killed by the tsunami on March 11th. But from what I understand, the bodies themselves were discovered on Wednesday, and in fact, they must have been reported missing for 3 weeks ago. I'm wondering, from the point of view of transparency, 3 weeks without being told that workers were missing, 5 days after their bodies were discovered, it's finally reported to the press. Was this decided by TEPCO independently, or was this a government decision? And also, are there any other workers missing that has not been reported yet? Thank you.
新月通信社とプレスのペンと申しますけれども、本日2名の作業員の死体が発見されたというニュースがありました。で、この2人は3月11日の津波によって死亡したということが報告されております。私の理解では、この遺体が実際に発見されたのは水曜日であったと、そして、行方不明になったのは3週間前であったと聞いておりますけれども、透明性の観点から言って、3週間前に行方不明であったことも発表されず、5日前に遺体が発見された時も発表をされなかったというのは、これは東電独自で発表しないというのは決めたことなんでしょうか、それとも政府の判断だったんでしょうか、それといまだに報告されていない、いまだに報道あるいは報告はされていないけれども、この2人以外にも行方不明の作業員は他にもいるんでしょうか。
まず2人の方が行方不明だったことはもうその当時から発表されてたと思います。それから30日にご遺体が見つかった後に発表しなかったのはご遺族の意向です。
First of all, it had already been made public at that time that the two workers were missing. It was already made public at the time that they were missing. And also, the reason it was not made public at the time that their bodies were found on the 30th, that is Wednesday, is because of the wishes of the bereaved families that it be not made public.
Well, the second part of my question is, was this a decision made by TEPCO or was it a decision made by the government? I mean, obviously, the bodies were found before the wishes of the families were known. So obviously, there was an immediate decision not to report it, at least until the families were informed. So could you please tell me if it was a TEPCO decision or a government decision to hold off for 5 days?
で、私の質問の後半部分がまだ答えられていないんですけれども、遺族に知らせるだいぶ前に死体そのものは発見されたと思うんですけれども、その時に直ちに発表しないという決定は東電の決定だったんでしょうか、それとも政府の決定だったんでしょうか。少なくても遺族に知らせる 前に直ちに発表するということはしなかったと、遺族にまず知らせたということは、東電の判断だったんでしょうか、政府の判断だったんでしょうか。
それは東京電力の判断ですけれども、そうすべきだというふうに私は思いますけれども。
Well, it was actually TEPCO that made that decision, but I also feel that that is what should have been done. That is how, I also believe that that is how it should have been handled.
私が申し上げたのは、東京電力としては、まず遺族に意向を聞いてから公表するかどうかを決めるべきだということなので、東京電力の判断は間違ってないと私は思います。
What I meant to say was, it was the decision of Tokyo Electric Power Company that they should inform the families first and hear their wishes before they made public about the bodies. And I also believe that the decision that was made by Tokyo Electric Power Company was not mistaken.
Yeah, just, but TEPCO did inform the government 5 days ago?
しかし政府は東電から5日前に遺体の発見はもう知らされていたということですね。
はい、それは報告を受けておりました。
Yes, we have been reported at that time.
Okay. Ken?
I've got two sets of questions. The first one is simple. It's to you, Shikata-san. The first one is that government representatives are not appearing at these press events, although they have said, the DPJ, that they want to have a government and a politician-led government. I know, and you know, that the top government leaders are not cowards and are afraid to meet the press. But for some people, they think it looks that way. When will top government officials, such as Edino or others, come to these press briefings every day? That's the first question. The second question for you is, can the government order TEPCO to send a senior executive to these press briefings on a daily basis as well? Because it seems like they are an institution of power and an autonomous player in some of these actions that are going on. And I think that we need to address our questions to them sometimes, not just to you.
2種類の質問があるんですけれども、四方さんにまず伺いたいんですけれども、政府の代表の方がこういったプレスブリーフィングに出ていらっしゃらないんですけれども、政治主導と言いながらこういったプレスとのブリーフィングに出てこないんですけれども、私も四方さんもご存知のように、別に政府の指導者は臆病でプレス会見を開くのが怖いということではないと思うんですけれども、一部の方に関してはそのように見えてしまうことがあります。例えば枝野官房長官など、いつになったら毎日のようにこのようなプレス会見に出てきていただけるんでしょうか。それが第1の質問。2つ目の質問は、政府は東電に対して毎日このようなプレスブリーフィングに代表を出すように指示することはできるのでしょうか。というのは、東電はそれなりに力があって、その独自のなんていうか存在、プレイヤー、独立したプレイヤーのように見えますので、単に我々としては政府の関係者のご意見を伺うだけではなくて、どこかの時点で東電のしかるべき関係者のお話を伺わざるを得ないと思うんですが。
In relation to your first question, as you are aware, there are Chief Cabinet Secretary's press conferences that are held during weekdays twice a day, and you are most welcome to attend them. And in addition, we are conducting a daily press briefing for international press. And so this is more of a technical, this involves technical briefings. And in the case of Mr. Nishiyama, he's doing briefing in Japanese multiple times a day, and in addition, he's coming over to Prime Minister's office to do the similar, technical briefings, which is the kind of summary of what's happening every day. So what we have been trying to do is we have introduced simultaneous translation for Prime Minister's press conferences and Chief Cabinet Secretary's press conferences, and in addition, we are providing opportunities for international press to be informed of including technical details along with various ministries and agencies represented here. As for TEPCO, this is something I probably have to consult with Mr. Nishiyama. There are different roles to be played by the government and the private company, and maybe Mr. Nishiyama may have a comment.
同時に訳されてないんで日本語にした方がいいですかね。官房長官は終日は1日2回記者会見を行っており、皆さんも参加することは歓迎されております。でそれに加えて毎日外国プレス向けのプレスブリーフィングも開かれております。ここで開かれているのはむしろもっと技術的な側面のブリーフィングで、西山審議官は日本プレス向けには1日何回もブリーフィングをしており、それに加えてこのように技術的な内容に関するブリーフィングを外国プレス向けに行うべく、総理官邸にこのように1日に1回来ており、毎日起こったことのいわゆる要約のようなことを説明してもらっております。で現在首相の記者会見および官房長官の記者会見には同時通訳を入れておりますし、それに加えて外国プレス向けに別途このような形で各省庁が参加して技術的なデータなども含めた情報提供をしております。次に東電に関してですけれども、これは西山審議官に伺わないとわからないんですけれども、政府と民間企業はそれぞれ別途の役割があると思うんですが。
まず東京電力はこの原子力発電の事業者として一義的な責任を負っており、その観点から国が命じるということはプレスへのブリーフィングを命じるということは、これはそういう権限は国にはありませんけれども、東京電力は自発的に情報提供を積極的にやっていると思います。
Regarding Tokyo Electric Power Company, TEPCO has primary responsibility as the nuclear power generation operator, nuclear power plant operator. And from this standpoint, the government does not have the authority to order TEPCO to give press briefings, but TEPCO is voluntarily on its own giving press conferences and press briefings to the extent that I know.
で外国のプレスの方に対してTEPCOがどういう姿勢かというのは私はよく存じませんけれども、基本的には国際的にも非常に関心の高いことですので、外国のプレスの方にもTEPCOは積極的に対応するのではないかと推測いたします。
And I do not know for sure TEPCO's attitude regarding the foreign members of the press, but considering the fact that basically this is a matter that is gaining a lot of interest and attention globally, I would assume that TEPCO will most probably take a positive attitude in dealing with the foreign press.
Okay.
Let me just respond to that. Shikata-san, all of that you've said is correct, but I would emphasize that none of you are elected officials. So from the point of view of accountability, you all represent the civil service, and you don't represent the political authority of the state of Japan. So I would argue that that is insufficient because, of course, the politicians are going to be judged, and part of that judgment is going to be by the international media. So if you could make that point to them that they should be here, because if not, it looks like they're derelict of that responsibility. The second question I have is for the representative from the Nuclear Safety Commission and from the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare. The government, the political authority of the country, has been setting the evacuation zones and has been receiving criticism that it has been too conservative. Other countries, both the international community as represented by the IAEA as well as the US government, have said that they feel that a wider area should be accepted. And even today, Edeno-san himself has said that they're going to look at the data and see if it needs to be selectively larger. We all, as mature individuals, know that the wind doesn't, and radiation contamination doesn't spread in a perfect radial form. So what might have been correct at the outset of a 20-kilometer radius would be meaningless after, say, week 1, week 2, week 3, after the winds have spread radiation contamination in an area-by-area pattern. That areas could have been measured, and now it looks like it's going to be. Do you think that the government is right to reassess this now 3 weeks into the crisis and not maybe after the first week or the second week? What I'm asking you is, do you confirm and concur with the government's estimation so far, or do you think that they have been over-conservative and that you would have taken a more precautionary approach?
今の点についてですけれども、四方さんが先ほど説明したのはもちろんその通りだということは分かってますけれども、ここに参加している方々はどなたもいわゆる議員、選挙で選出された議員ではないということで、そういった意味での責任はなく、皆さんはいわゆる政治を代表するのではなく、公務員を代表する方々ですので、それでは十分ではないと思うんです。政治が判断したことに関して、それも含めて世界のメディアが見ておりますので、ですから政治家もここに参加すべきだと思いますし、政治家が参加しないとその責任を回避しようとしているのではないかというふうに見られることもあるということをぜひ政治家の方々に伝えていただきたいと思います。それともう一つ、厚生労働省と原子力保安院の方に、原子力安全委員会の方にお伺いしたいんですけれども、避難地域を決めたのは政治家だと思うんですけれども、少し控えめすぎた、狭すぎたんではないかという批判が、例えば国際社会 IAEA に代表される国際社会などからも出ておりますし、それとアメリカ政府などももう少し広い地域を避難地域にすべきなんではないかと感じているということも聞こえてきます。で、本日枝野官房長官の発言の中ではデータを検討し、その特定の地域に関してはより広い地域を定めるかどうか検討するという発言がありましたけれども、我々大人としてみんなよく分かっていることは、放射能汚染というのは別に同心円といいますか、放射線上だけに広がるわけではなく、当初は確かに原発から20キロ圏内で当初は正しかったかもしれませんけれども、だんだん1週間、2週間、3週間経つにつれて、それが必ずしも 妥当ではないということもありますし、また風に乗ってどんどん広がる中で、その地域ごとの測定をして決めるべきなのではないかという意見もありますので、1週間目、2週間目ではなく、その3週間目の今になって避難地域を見直すという政府の姿勢は正しいのでしょうか。それと政府の避難地域の設定に関して懸念はお持ちでしょうか。すなわち原子力安全委員会としてはもう少し慎重になんていうんですか、安全を見て要するにもう少し広い避難地域を設定するでしょうか。要するになんていうか、政治が決めた今の避難地域に関して、ご懸念はお持ちでしょうか。もしあなたが判断するとしたら、もう少し広い避難地域を設定するのでしょうか。
原子力安全委員会の事務局からお答えをしたいと思います。
Then I would like to respond on behalf of the Secretariat of the Nuclear Safety Commission.
それで避難区域についてはいろいろな意見があったということは承知しています。
We are aware that there were various different views regarding the evacuation area.
しかしながら日本が設定をしたこの避難区域については、例えばアメリカもそれは妥当だという意見を述べたということも聞いております。
I must say, however, that, for instance, we have been informed that the United States has made or expressed the view that they consider valid the evacuation area that has been established by Japan.
今各省が協力をしてその周辺地域のモニタリング、放射線のモニタリングなどを行っておりますので、その結果を分析して、あるいはより精度の高いシミュレーションを行うということによって、この避難区域が妥当なものであるかということは今後も検討していくことが大事だと思います。
Currently, various different agencies and ministries and organizations are cooperating with each other to monitor the radiation in the surrounding areas, and we intend to analyze the results of that monitoring and do a more precise simulation. And I believe it is important that we continue to study whether or not the evacuation area that we have now is valid or not.
今現在の避難区域については、その放射線のレベルなども考慮して妥当なものであるというふうに考えております。
And taking into account the radiation levels and others, we consider that at the current point in time, the evacuation areas that we now have are valid.
一つ付け加えさせていただきますと、参考までにIAEA が一時土壌のサンプルから、IAEA の避難基準の2倍の値が出たという発表をしましたけれども、これはある一点で、の値に基づくもので、平均値で評価し直したところ避難基準以下であったということを IAEA 自身も述べております。
I just have one point I wish to add for your information. IAEA at one point made public that they have measured from a soil sample a level that is double the IAEA evacuation standard. But it was found that this was based on a sample from just a certain point, and when IAEA reassessed their evaluation based on the average number, IAEA itself has made public that the levels were below the IAEA evacuation standard.
And regarding your comment about elected official, I will convey your message to elected officials at the Prime Minister's office.
で先ほどのその議員が参加していないという点に関しては、総理府の関係議員にご意見を伝えたいと思います。厚生労働省の方からもお答えいただけますでしょうか。要するに避難地域に関して、政府が設定した、政府というのはこれ今政治家が設定した範囲に関して厚生労働省としては妥当だとお考えかどうか。
その点に関しましては、基本的には原子力安全委員会の判断に基づいて対応されているというふうに考えております。
It is our understanding that the decision is made on this point by the Nuclear Safety Commission, and we follow that decision.
This is based on the advice coming from Nuclear Safety Commission, yes. Given that the time is limiting, since 1 hour has passed, I'd like to limit to the last, only those people who have not asked questions. So, Lindsay? Yeah. Okay, so go ahead.
I'm Lindsay Whip from the Financial Times. I'd just like to ask a quick question about the leak in the Daiichi plant. How long are you going to attempt to block it with the polymer, and what is the alternative plan after that if it doesn't work? Thank you.
ファイナンシャル・タイムズもですけれども、簡単な質問一つ、福島第一原発の漏れに関して、どのぐらいの期間ポリマーでその漏れを阻止するおつもりなんでしょうか。でそれがうまくいかなかった場合の次の代案としてはどういった方法があるんでしょうか。
まずまだポリマーも成果を上げてないんですけれども、もしポリマーで水が止められるようであれば、そこに例えばコンクリートを流し込むとかして永続的なものにしたいと思っています。
First of all, we have not yet been able to confirm whether the polymer has been effective, but if it is effective and if the polymer can stop the leak, as the next step, we intend to make it permanent, for instance, by pouring concrete over it.
で今そのポリマーを入れた場所とは違うルートでリークしている可能性も出てきたものですから、それを明日からそのルートを探して、そこについてはその見つかったルートに応じた方法になりますけれども、例えばそのポリマーとかが難しければ何らかの形でそのルートを遮るような工事をするというようなこともあるかと思います。
Now we also there also has emerged the possibility of a different route in addition to the place where we have poured the polymer. So from tomorrow we are going to look for the other routes as well, and it would depend on what kind of place the other leakages are. But if we find that it is a place where it would be difficult to use the polymer, we may do other kind of work to cut off that leakage route in some way.
And sorry, just quickly, could you confirm that you started infusing nitrogen gas into the reactors today to prevent a hydrogen explosion? Thanks.
一つだけ確認なんですけれども、水素爆発を防ぐために今日から原子炉に窒素の注入を始めたということを確認していただけますでしょうか。
窒素を入れる計画はありますけど、まだ今は入れてないと思います。これから1日2日とかそのぐらいの間に始めるのではないかと思います。
There are plans to inject nitrogen, but it has not yet been done. And I would expect that it would start in 1 or 2 days.
Just one more question for Mr. Nishiyama. We're now in the 4th week since the tsunami and earthquake. I'm wondering if you could give us the most detailed, best, sort of educated guess scenario of how much longer we're talking before we might, make progress on getting or might actually restart the cooling systems in all 4 of the remaining reactors. What kind of time frame are we talking about now that you've seen this many weeks? You see the progress level going on. If you could just be as detailed as possible. Thanks.
西山さんに質問なんですけれども、地震と津波が起こってからもう4週目に入ろうとしておりますけれども、4つの原子炉すべてで冷却システムを再起動するまでにはあとどのぐらいの時間がかかるとお考えでしょうか。できるだけ詳細にいろんな状況、今知り得る情報等にのっとって推定できる最も詳細なシナリオを伺えればと思います。大体どのぐらいの時間枠でお考えでしょうか。今までの進捗の度合いも見ていらしていると思いますので、それにのっとってできるだけ詳細にどのぐらいあと時間がかかりそうでしょうか。
いくつかの課題があります。冷やすこと、水を入れて冷やすことは当然の前提として、その後今ある水を回収すること、水をどけること、それから放射線を遮蔽すること、遮ること、さらに永続的な冷却システムを作り上げることなどです。
We have a number of challenges that we need to deal with. The first is obviously injecting water for cooling the reactors, which would be a prerequisite. And then we need to collect the water and get it out of the way, and also shield the radiation to be able, and also create a sustainable cooling system.
それでこれらについてはこれから何週間かで行われることもありますし、それから何ヶ月かかかるものもあると思います。もっと長くかかるものもあるかもしれません。で今日まさに細野首相補佐官が数ヶ月が一つの節目だろうというふうに言われましたけれども、その言葉は大体節目を表しているのではないかと思います。
And there may be challenges that we can deal with in several weeks. There may be others that may take several months, and maybe there may be others that may take even longer. And today, Mr. Hosono, advisor to the Prime Minister, mentioned that a time frame of several months would be one point. One important point, and I believe his statement does express the time frame which would become an important juncture for us.
Very last question, Yamaguchi.
P 通信の山口です。西山さんかそれ以外の 皆さんどなたかでも構わないんですけれども、現在東電の繰り返された各種や線量の算定の問題で一時期そのたまり水あるいは海水に漏れている水の情報が公表されていないんですけれども、その間に例えばそれ、私たちも知ることができないわけですし、他にその対策が必要になった時にその遅れに結びつくことはないのか、その心配はないのかということと、それから東電にだけにお任せするのではなく、例えば政府側としても別途独自にその調査をするという可能性があるのかないのか教えていただけますでしょうか。
I am Yamaguchi from AP. My question is to Mr. Nishiyama or anybody else that would be appropriate to respond to this question. Currently, TEPCO has been repeatedly making mistakes in the calculation of the nuclides and dose levels, and so at one time the data for the stagnant water and the water that has been flowing into the sea has not been made public, and as a result, we are not able to know the data for that period of time when TEPCO has made a mistake in the calculation. But at the same time, do you have any concern that this lack of data for that period would lead to any delay when measures become necessary? And also, should this be totally left to TEPCO, or is there any possibility that the government also would do a investigation of these matters separately?
この東京電力のデータに関する間違いというのは今回の特に学習分析にあたってそのスペクトラムが非常に普通のスペクトラムと違うことによってを読まなきゃいけないためにかなりのその熟練した能力を必要としたためであります。
The mistake that TEPCO made in the data, particularly for the nuclide analysis, was due to the reason that they had it involved reading a spectrum that is different from the usual spectrum that is used for the reading, and as a result required a very experienced expertise.
で確かにその原因はあるにしてもそれによってデータがしばらくこの2日ばかりですか提供されてないということは我々としては非常に遺憾に思っておりまして、これはすぐにでも元というかデータが出せる状態に今持っていこうと思って急いでおります。
Although there was a cause to this mistake in the data, it is true that for a period of time, I believe for a period of 2 days, data was not provided as a result, and we regret that this has happened. And we are trying to restore a situation quickly where the relevant data can be provided.
で政府と東京電力の役割ははっきり分かれておりまして、政府は政府のやるべきところでデータを取りその分析をしております。で東京電力のやる分については東京電力にこれからもやってもらいますけれども、それについてよりその熟練した専門家のアドバイスを受けるような形にすることにしています。
The role of the government and the role of TEPCO are clearly delineated, and the government on its part is collecting the data that it ought to be collecting and is doing the necessary analysis. And so we intend to have TEPCO do the work that TEPCO ought to be doing. But going forward, we will have TEPCO also use the advice of experienced experts.
This concludes today's briefing, and we'll have another round of briefing tomorrow evening. Thank you.